It's entirely possible that you've heard the exact same piece of music 1,000 times in your life, completely by accident.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like, think about that alternating minor second interval, right? Dropping down, winding back up, repeating like a heartbeat. You hear it plinking out of a child's plastic electronic toy.
Right, or like as the tinny compressed hold music when you're trapped on the phone with your internet provider.
Exactly. You hear it sampled in movies, stitched into modern pop songs, and almost certainly drifting out of a neighbor's open window on a Saturday afternoon as someone plods through their second year of piano lessons.
Oh yeah, the classic piano lesson tune.
I am talking, of course, about Beethoven's For Elise. It is, without a doubt, one of the most ubiquitous pieces of music on the planet.
It really is. It has completely transcended the concert hall. Like, it's a piece of classical music that has just become a permanent fixture in the ambient noise of modern human life.
Yeah, it's just everywhere.
You hear it, and you don't even process that a human being had to sit down in a room, centuries ago and pull those exact notes out of thin air. It is practically baked into the environment.
Baked into the environment. But here is the thing that absolutely stopped me in my tracks today.
Okay, what's that?
Well, for over a century, historians, biographers, and musicologists have been turning their archives upside down, trying to answer one deceptively simple question, and that is, who on earth is Elise?
Right, the million-dollar question.
Because you would think for a piece of music this famous, arguably one of the most famous melodies ever conceived,
Yeah.
we would know exactly who it was dedicated to.
You would think so, but the historical record is incredibly frustrating on that front. I mean, the biographical hunt for a real, literal, historical woman named Elise has been this relentless pursuit for generations.
Like a massive historical wild goose chase.
Exactly. Scholars have sifted through birth records, scrutinized Beethoven's letters, investigated literally every woman in his social circle, and it has consistently hit a dead end.
Wow, nothing at all.
There are endless historical theories, sure, but absolutely nothing that conclusively solves the mystery.
Which brings us to the grounding source for our deep dive today. We are looking at a thoroughly fascinating March 2026 preprint paper by Andres J. Lopez.
Yes, a really incredible piece of research.
It is titled The Sculptor of Sound, a Hypothesis on Für Elise and the Pygmalion Mythos. And the mission of our discussion today is to pivot completely away from that historical, biographical wild goose chase we just mentioned.
Right, we're done looking for a literal person.
Exactly. We're going to stop looking for a hidden mistress or a forgotten piano student. Instead, we're exploring a literary and mythological theory that suggests Elise isn't a human being at all, but a profound symbol of artistic creation.
And it completely changes how you hear the piece.
It really does. Okay, let's unpack this. Because if Elise isn't a person but a symbol, we have to start by looking at what Beethoven and his contemporaries were actually reading, thinking about, and honestly obsessing over at the time.
Yeah, and to understand the intellectual currents of that era of emerging German Romanticism, we actually have to go all the way back to antiquity. We have to look at the Roman poet Ovid.
Ovid. Okay, taking us way back.
Way back. Specifically, Ovid's epic work Metamorphoses, which contains the famous story of Pygmalion.
Right, the sculptor.
Exactly. So for those who might need a quick mythological refresher, Pygmalion is a sculptor from the island of Cyprus. And according to the myth, he becomes disgusted by the flaws of mortal women.
As one does in ancient myths.
Right. So he decides to carve an ivory statue of what he considers to be the absolute unblemished ideal of a woman, and he works on it tirelessly.
Just pouring everything into it.
He pours every ounce of his soul, his talent, and his longing into this creation. And the carving is so perfect, so incredibly lifelike, that a tragedy occurs. He actually falls deeply in love with his own work of art.
He falls in love with the cold ivory. That is just the ultimate metaphor for an artist's total consuming obsession with their own work.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It really is. And the myth goes that Pygmalion is so consumed, so heartbroken by the fact that he cannot truly connect with the object he created, that he pleads with Venus, the goddess of love.
He wants her to fix it.
Yeah, he begs her to grant him a living person in the exact likeness of his statue. And Venus eventually takes compassion on him. She animates the statue. The cold ivory turns to warm flesh.
Wow. She actually brings the artwork to life.
She does, fulfilling Pygmalion's deepest desire. Now, while this is an ancient Roman myth, Lopez points out in the paper that this specific story heavily fascinated the thinkers of the 18th century Enlightenment.
Wait, I want to pause on that for a second, because the Enlightenment was an era completely obsessed with science, logic, mathematics, and strict categorization, right?
Oh, absolutely, the Age of Reason.
Right. So why would thinkers in an era of intense logic care about a magical fairy tale where a statue turns into a real person?
Well, that is the crucial context here. You had major intellectual figures of the time, people like Karl Ramler, Georg Benda, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, all creating works that touched on this exact myth.
So they were actively engaging with it.
Yes, heavily. But they weren't looking at it as a fairy tale at all. For these Enlightenment thinkers, the Pygmalion story was a philosophical vehicle.
A vehicle for what,
They
exactly?
used it to explore the metaphysics of creation, the nature of existence, and a creator's ultimate devotion to the work of their own hands. It was this perfect allegory for the artistic process itself.
Okay, the analogy here is incredibly striking when you map it onto Beethoven.
It really is, yeah.
Like, we can directly compare Pygmalion's physical sculpting of ivory to Beethoven's musical composition. In this scenario, Beethoven is the sculptor. He is Pygmalion.
Yes.
And the music itself, the notes, the pacing, the harmonies, that is his ivory statue. That is the thing he is painstakingly shaping and pouring his soul into.
That is the exact core of the parallel Lopez draws in the paper. Music was Beethoven's life's labor of love. And the paper notes that Beethoven had many well-documented, highly frustrating, and unsuccessful attempts at winning a woman's heart in his actual life.
He was notoriously unlucky in love.
Very much so. And those constant romantic failures only made his work his primary, most stable relationship of devotion. To Beethoven, the music was his statue.
He was literally transforming all of his unfulfilled emotional and romantic longing into this incredible, towering, creative output.
Exactly. The music was where he put all of that passion.
Okay, hold on, wait. I am completely tracking with the analogy. It makes perfect sense that a passionate, lonely artist would relate to a myth about falling in love with your own creation.
Sure.
But anyone who knows their Greek and Roman mythology is going to spot a massive hole in this theory.
Ah, the name.
Yeah, the name. All of it actually didn't give the statue a name in the original text, but centuries of subsequent tradition unanimously referred to Pygmalion's animated statue as Galatea.
Right, Galatea.
So how on earth do we get from a mythological figure named the Galatea to a piano piece titled For Elise? I mean, For Galatea has a very different ring to it.
It does. It really does. And that missing leap is the exact hurdle that kept this connection obscured from historians for over a century.
So there's a missing link.
Yes. To trace the evolution from Galatea to Elise, we have to look at a missing link in European literary history. We need to introduce an 18th century Swiss writer and critic named Johann Jakob Bodmer.
Johann Jakob Bodmer. Okay, who is this guy, and why does he have the authority to just rewrite ancient mythology?
Well, Bodmer was a zealous champion of the German literary imagination. And to understand his move here, we have to look at the cultural battlefield he was stepping into.
Set the scene for us.
So on one side, you had the dominant mainstream force of the era, which was French neoclassicism and the Enlightenment.
The logic, guys.
Right, the logic guys. As we just discussed, this was a mainstream culture obsessed with pragmatism, strict rules, and dry philosophy. When they looked at the Pygmalion myth, they treated it as a cold, metaphysical exercise.
Which doesn't sound very romantic at all.
It wasn't. And Bodmer hated that approach. He was actively pushing back against those rigid neoclassical rules, trying to forge a new, distinctly Germanic literary identity.
Oh, okay.
He was laying the groundwork for what would eventually explode into the German Romantic movement.
And Romanticism is the polar opposite of Enlightenment logic, right? It's all about raw human emotion, nature, chaos, and the visionary power of the individual artist.
Exactly. It's about feeling over formula.
So how does Bodmer use the Pygmalion myth to push this new romantic agenda?
Well, in 1749, Bodmer published his own adaptation of the Pygmalion story. He kept the name Pygmalion for the sculptor, but he deliberately changed the name of the central object of Pygmalion's passion.
A statue?
Yes, he renamed the animated statue. The title of his 1749 publication was Pygmalion ou Elise.
Wow. He literally just changed the name from Galatea to Elise.
He just changed it.
But why that specific name? Did it mean something in Swiss German? Was it an anagram?
You know, the historical record doesn't hand us a neat diary entry explicitly stating why the specific sequence of letters E-L-I-S-E was chosen over any other.
That would be too easy.
Way too easy. But what's fascinating here is why Bodmer made the change conceptually. By renaming her, he stripped away all the dry Enlightenment metaphysics associated with the traditional telling.
He gave her a fresh identity.
Exactly. For Bodmer, Elise was not a metaphysical puzzle. She represented, as the paper quotes, beauty guiding the artist in his creative work.
Ah, it's beautiful.
He made the story explicitly about the romance, the agony, and the beauty of creation.
But wait, if he published this in 1749, why wasn't this just common knowledge among historians looking at Beethoven's For Elise?
That's a great question.
Because if it's a published book, why did it take until Andres Lopez in 2026 to bring this connection to the forefront?
Well, it comes down to the format and the timing. You have to remember, Romanticism wouldn't fully grip the culture for several more decades. Bodmer's work came too early.
Ahead of his time.
Very much so. It was too emotional, too steeped in romantic idealism for the logic-obsessed mainstream readers of his day, so it was largely overlooked by the general public.
Okay, that makes sense.
Furthermore, Pygmalion and Elise wasn't some massive, sweeping, leather-bound epic cataloged in every royal library. It was only 36 pages long.
Wait, 36 pages? It was a pamphlet.
A very short pamphlet,
What?
not a major literary event that the mainstream press would have reviewed or debated at all.
So we are basically talking about an 18th century underground zine.
Oh, I like that comparison. Yes.
Think about how zines work in modern artistic subcultures, right? They aren't sold in massive mainstream bookstores. They are printed cheap, they are highly niche, and the general public completely ignores them. But they get passed hand to hand in basements, coffee houses, and back rooms by the exact visionary artists who are trying to build a new movement. It is the literary equivalent of a punk scene laying the groundwork for a whole new way of thinking.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize the mechanism of its influence. It was obscure to the general public, absolutely. But within that specific, highly concentrated atmosphere of rising German Romanticism, its influence was potent.
It found its audience.
It survived, it was preserved, and it circulated among the avant-garde. It was just far enough off the beaten path that its connection to Beethoven went unnoticed by mainstream biographers for 2 centuries.
But we have absolute proof that this zine actually reached the top tier of the culture, because the paper points out a massively critical corroborating fact here.
Yes, the Goethe connection.
Right. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, arguably the single most important and influential German writer of the entire era, also used the name Elise.
He did. In his 1816 work, Italienische Reise, Goethe uses Elise rather than the conventional Galatea when referring to Pygmalion's animated creation.
And Goethe and Beethoven actually met in real life.
They did. They met in Teplitz in July of 1812.
I mean, this is a huge piece of the puzzle. It proves that this specific Bodmer variation, this idea of Pygmalion's living statue being named Elise, was actively circulating in Beethoven's exact artistic circles.
It was definitely in the air.
It wasn't some lost manuscript in a dusty basement. It was an idea being actively engaged with by the absolute heavyweights of German Romanticism.
Oh, absolutely.
So Beethoven, who was cultured, well-read, and deeply embedded in this world, would absolutely have been familiar with the concept that Elise was the ultimate symbol of an artist's creation coming to life.
The literary atmosphere he lived in was absolutely primed for this association, no doubt about it.
Which brings us to the most critical question of this whole deep dive. If Beethoven knew this underground romantic myth where the artist's living creation is named Elise, what was happening in his own life that made him so desperate to sculpt his own Elise right at that specific moment?
The timing is everything here.
Context is everything, and the timeline here is honestly devastating. Let's look at the dates. For Elise was written in 1810.
Right.
The original manuscript is actually lost to history, but the autograph was reported by a man named Ludwig Noll later in 1867. But the widely accepted composition date is 1810. So what is going on in Beethoven's mind and his body in 1810?
It is a dark, terrifying, and incredibly isolating period for him. He is suffering from intense emotional frustration.
The romantic failures we mentioned.
Right. His attempts to find a human partner have failed.
Yeah.
But far more devastating than his romantic loneliness is his physical reality. In 1810, his hearing loss is worsening significantly.
Oh, man.
The ringing, the buzzing, the fading of frequencies, it is becoming undeniable.
He's going deaf. The greatest composer of his age is losing the one sense his entire existence is built upon.
Yes. He is actively confronting the horrifying reality that he will soon go entirely deaf and that he will never actually hear his own works played back to him again.
That is just, I can't even fathom it.
Imagine the psychological terror of that. And to understand the weight of this, we have to look at how Beethoven viewed his art. He didn't just see music as a profession or a pleasant diversion.
It was his life.
To him, it was a profound, almost divine calling. If we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a quote attributed to Beethoven from 1810, recorded by Bettina von Arnim.
Okay, what's the quote?
Now, I should mention the Beethoven House in Bonn considers the exact historical attribution of this quote to be doubtful, but scholars agree the sentiment perfectly encapsulates his ethos at the time. The quote is, "Music is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy."
Wow. Which completely mirrors that shift from Enlightenment logic to romantic emotion that Bodmer was pushing for.
Exactly.
Music isn't math. It is revelation. It is magic.
And his primary conduit for that revelation was the piano. It was his absolute favorite instrument.
Because the piano is so incredibly tactile, right? Like he could sit at the keyboard and physically feel the vibrations of the chords in his hands traveling up his arms. It is deeply intimate.
That physical connection was vital as his hearing faded.
Yeah, he didn't have to rely on communicating his vision to an orchestra conductor across a room. He could express himself directly, physically, with his own fingers striking the keys.
It provided an unmediated physical connection between his internal genius and the external world.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the paper, Lopez brings up a letter Beethoven wrote a decade later, in November of 1820, to Nicholas Simrock.
Yes, this letter is crucial.
In it, Beethoven says, "I would rather write 10,000 notes than a single letter of the alphabet." He is outright stating that music is his true language. Words fail him, but the notes do not.
That letter tells you everything about where his true voice lived. And when you pair that statement with the impending terror of his deafness in 1810, it completely reframes how we must view for Elise.
It really does.
If we accept Lopez's hypothesis, this piece of music is not some secret romantic letter to a human lover he couldn't have. It is a deeply personal, almost desperate act of solidarity with Pygmalion.
It transforms the piece from a simple dedication into a plea. It is a prayer to the gods.
A prayer, yes.
Beethoven is Pygmalion looking at his ivory statue, his music, knowing that very soon he will be plunged into absolute, unbreakable silence. He is saying to the universe, "Bring my work to life, because in a short time I will know it no longer."
Exactly. Beethoven knew his physical body was failing. His ears were dying. But if the music could take on a life of its own, if it could become Elise and breathe on its own, then a part of his soul would survive the silence.
He would live on through it.
As Lopez puts it, the music was destined to outlive us all.
I mean, it genuinely gives me chills. Thinking of this notoriously gruff, brilliant man sitting alone at his piano, feeling the vibrations of the keys and pouring this delicate, winding melody out as a sheer survival instinct.
It's a powerful image.
He is carving the statue and praying it breathes.
It completely changes the architecture of those opening notes for me. It is not just a pretty, simple melody anymore. It is an artist grappling with his own mortality, his failing body, and his legacy.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started this deep dive talking about how ubiquitous for Elise's in your daily life.
Right, the plastic toys and hold music.
Exactly. How it's a cliche piano lesson tune or a compressed ringtone on a flip phone. But when you look at it through the lens of the Pygmalion myth, it taps into something universally human.
It really does.
It is about that deep, primal desire we all have to create something that outlasts our own fragile, failing bodies. Whether it is a piece of art, a business you build, a family you raise, or an idea you share. We all want to carve something beautiful that keeps breathing after we are gone.
The source material actually brings this exact idea into the modern era, too. Lopez references a 2006 paper by Mina Yang, which explores postmodern readings of Beethoven in popular contexts.
Oh, interesting. What does she say?
While Yang looks at how Für Elise has been adapted into pop music, films, and daily life, constantly undergoing transformation and reinterpretation.
Right. The sonic wallpaper we talked about at the very beginning, the hold music, the child's toy.
But think about that sonic wallpaper through this new mythological lens. If Elise represents the music itself coming alive, as Bodmer envisioned in that underground pamphlet, then every single time a 7-year-old student plunks out those notes in a lesson, every time a concert pianist performs it on a grand stage, or even every time a smartphone ringtone plays that famous alternating minor second interval.
Wow. We are effectively granting Beethoven's ultimate wish.
We are.
We're keeping the statue alive.
Does that make every single person who plays or hears the song a temporary Pygmalion? Are we, in our modern, everyday contexts, constantly breathing life back into Beethoven's greatest love centuries after he lost his hearing?
That is incredible to think about.
We are the ones answering his prayer. But, if we follow this metaphor to its ultimate heartbreaking conclusion, it raises a haunting question about the rest of his life.
What do you mean?
Well, if Furley's, written in 1810 as his hearing faded, was his statue successfully coming to life, what happened a decade later when he went completely stone deaf?
Oh, wow.
Did he view his later, much darker masterpieces, the late string quartets, the final symphonies, as statues that simply refused to breathe? Did he feel the gods had stopped answering his prayers, leaving him alone in the silence, chiseling away at cold ivory that would never warm to the touch again?
That is just
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so profound. I think the takeaway here is to keep questioning the stories behind the things you encounter every day. Next time you hear those iconic notes drifting out of a window or playing through a phone speaker, you'll know exactly who Elise really is. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.